All right, everybody. Same old in Regina. Lions lose again. A last-minute touchdown drive by the Riders. 31-27, they fall. Lots to talk about here. A lot of stuff that we kind of were worried about heading into this season kind of bore some fruit. And we'll be joined by Cole here as soon as he gets his way to his computer, I'm sure. We were looking to start this at 7, but of course the game just ended. Be the same link as last time, Bryce. Same link as always. If you go into your chat, I think it's the same link every time. Wow. Just going to collect our thoughts here a little bit. I'm going to switch to this view here because I think Bryce is going to be joining us. Again, defense is an issue. The secondary is going to be a project. Way too many wide open receivers for the Riders tonight. Trevor Harris was able to sit back most of the night and pick and choose who he wanted to throw to. Guys were wide open. That last drive, they had him 1st and 20 off the penalty. And then they take a pass interference call, give them the first down, and then it was just wide open, touchdown all the way down the field. So let me try and send this to Bryce here. I don't know if he's got the link or not. Get your comments in. We're going to be talking about this for the next hour or so. Bryce just came into the studio here. What's up, Bryce?
How's it going, Brian?
Same old in Regina.
Same old.
Yeah, Keon Schaefer-Baker, a Lion killer. For tonight he was anyway. But Trevor Harris was just like unstoppable. And when you're not getting any pressure on him and he can sit back there and find wide open receivers. We had concerns about the secondary coming into this season, and we still have concerns about the secondary right now. Now, granted, the Lions didn't get a lot of pressure tonight, and that's not going to help a secondary that's trying to find themselves. What were your thoughts, Bryce?
I thought I was watching the West Final on repeat and just new uniforms, basically. That's legitimately what I thought. And, you know, the fact that the Lions, what was it? They had one drive in the entire first quarter of the game, I think. Yeah. Maybe two.
One.
Like, you can't win football games against good teams when you have one drive in a quarter. Like, that literally means that the Roughriders controlled 80 to 90% of the time of possession in one quarter alone with a quarterback like Harris that likes to play pitch and catch. Like, this to me also, it goes back for me a little bit too here, Brian, with like, look how limited our defense played in the preseason as a unit. You have a new middle linebacker, like you have all these new secondary pieces, and I barely saw Jackson Finley out there. I barely saw TJ Lee out there. And even if Gary Peters is healthy, I don't think Russell played so badly that it's like, oh gosh, Gary Peters is going to be the savior of the secondary. Like, they couldn't stop anything. It was like Harris had his pick of the litter on who he wanted to throw to. Now, Baker made a lot of the plays, but, to me, there wasn't enough variety in that defense where I was going, okay, what are they actually, what disguises do they have and things like that. And on the flip side, when you look at the Riders, you saw a lot of the pressures they brought at Nathan throughout the game. And the other thing I'll say is our offensive line did not do a good job run blocking today at all.
No, I didn't think either team particularly ran the ball that effectively tonight, but yeah, I mean, it's frustrating, right? Because you go into Regina, this is a new season, we're going to make a statement, we want to make a statement, and you're down by 14 to start the game with no resistance, like just zero pushback. That was disheartening. They did battle back. The defense started to make some plays. Betts had a sack there on one series that kind of got them going a little bit, but at the end of the day, they just couldn't stop a beach ball tonight. It was concerning, and we'll get Cole's early thoughts here as he's just joined the show.
What's going on, gentlemen? Wish I was joining you on a little bit of a better occasion, but it's something about these first post-game shows. I think it was our first post-game show a few years ago. I think it was the Argos comeback win against us, I think, to open up the 24-23 season, I want to say. So unfortunately, this is kind of becoming a theme to start the year. But as you said, Brian, it was a little bit disheartening to kind of basically give the Riders 14-0 off rip and have little to no resistance defensively, and something we talked about all offseason, specifically within the secondary, and kind of how many problems, I guess I shouldn't say problems, but how many question marks were left in the secondary going into the season. They were all coming to the forefront tonight in game one. And it's a long season, as both you guys know. So it's definitely one that's concerning moving forward.
I think it's just frustrating, right? Because it's the scene of the crime from last year. It's like the exact same result, pretty much. The Riders march the field on their final series and take the game away from us again. And really, did the Lions deserve to win that game?
Yeah.
You can debate whether they did or not. I think that they battled back. I think the offense kind of did their part. They had some issues as well. Some questionable throws by Nathan. Some drops. That touchdown that Nathan scored where he was pushed in by the big boys there. McKinnis dropped a wide open touchdown pass just before that. I mean, he doesn't usually do that.
Yeah,
Keon Hatcher wasn't really a factor tonight. He had some catches, but there's work to be done for sure.
Yeah, what I was going to say there was I think the little difference that I would say from last year in the West Final is that I think the Riders were the better team here tonight. I think in the West Final, 100%. The BC Lions were the better team on the field, and that's why I think that one is much more bitter. Tonight, Brian, as I think we did talk about on Wednesday, like obviously we'd love to have a win, but close football game, right? I think we are going to rant tonight. There is a lot of frustration to talk about, but at the end of the day, there's no panic button. We're going to be in a lot of games. We talked about it all offseason about the West and being having how much parity it is. Now it just ratchets up the urgency now when the Riders come into town twice to end the year that we have to get those football games to make sure that we kind of, get back home field advantage. But I think the Riders are in victory tonight. They were the better team. The BC Lions started out way too slow to begin this football game. And you could see, I think we were curious to see who was going to maybe benefit from the pregame hype and all that sort of stuff. You could tell that the Riders were fired up to defend their home turf, and they did.
Yeah, we got a question here from Sheila Scar, She-Lion. Read lots of criticism from Benny. Thoughts? I think it's too early to criticize Benny. I mean, you got a secondary that's trying to find its way. You got two new corners out there. It's going to take a while for this secondary to gel, but and for those that say he played soft on the final drive, no, they were bringing guys. And Trevor Harris was just finding open receivers like Trevor Harris does. So let's give Benny a little more time to get this sorted out, but I don't know what you guys think.
This is where I think, and we talked about just before you got on, Cole, the lack of reps for this unit as a whole in the preseason. Like I get the practice reps and the in-game scrimmage you can do in training camp, but when the bullets are flying real time, real communication needs to happen. You could see breakdowns in that unit where you've got guys running clear open over the middle of the field, 30, 20 to 30 yards downfield. I will say this. What were your guys' thoughts of Ronald Kent tonight? I thought he really struggled tonight.
Yeah, I think the interior, the defensive back, I think both halves. TJ made one play, which was nice down around the goal line, but I think you saw KSB go off. It was all in the interior of the offense, right? Whether it was Deontay Williams, whether it was on Ronald Kent's side, TJ Lee's. Well, I agree with you, Bryce, and talking about the reps or lack of reps in the preseason. A lot of the secondary played outside of TJ Lee, right? Like Colden played in the preseason, Russell played in the preseason, Kent played in the preseason as well. Like, and those guys were the biggest problem right here tonight, right? I think maybe we would have liked to see maybe a little bit more out of Darnell Sankey. The run game from the Riders was fairly quiet. I don't know what Ouellette would have finished with officially, but I think Sankey will over time start to have more impact in the game, but. I just think defensively, it was a tough one, especially for some of the halfbacks and Deontay at nickel.
Yeah, I also noticed Ronald Kent tonight. I thought he had a rough night. That last touchdown, he was 5 yards behind Emelis. Like you got to be better. And he's a guy that's kind of been pointed out as might be a guy that's on the bubble, right? Like he needs to improve this year and take a step. But I did think he struggled tonight. I thought a lot of guys struggled tonight. I thought Golden had a tough night. Didn't notice Russell as much, but they were picking, good. Yeah, and
he made a play late in the game too.
Yeah, and they mentioned I didn't know this, but they mentioned on on the broadcast tonight that Gary Peters is on the 6th game now. So
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
That's a
That would-
concern.
that-
And like you guys know my opinion on that.
Yeah.
And what we talked about in the preseason, like that's salary cap. That's a guy that's not going to play at least for the 6 games. And if we got to go through this 70% Gary Peters thing again all year, it's not going to be good.
They had. Sorry,
Go
Bryce.
ahead,
They had to have known as well. Like they knew GP got the knee procedure in the offseason. You doubled down by bringing him back.
What I don't understand
go
here
ahead, Bryce.
is they did this with TJ Lee last year, right? TJ Lee wasn't here, and they brought him back when they realized, okay, now you're healthy. Now you can be a part of the secondary. And they figured that out. Why could you not have done that with Gary Peters? If you knew you were going to have to put him on the 6th game, bring another young corner. Maybe you keep Ruffin or one of these other guys that's got some experience. And you say, okay, Gary, when you're healthy and we'll keep tabs on you, stay local, we will bring you back just like we did with TJ. But now you've put him on the 6th game. To your point, Brian, you brought that, cap space. And Cole, like you said,
well, you save the cap space as long as he's on there, but still, like, you could have signed another player.
Exactly. And brought him out of camp. Like, and this is to Cole's point, like, you could not have been sitting there in Kamloops going, yeah, no, Gary's going to be ready week 1. And then now he's on the 6th game injured. Like, you had to have had some sort of idea timetable wise where the guy's at. And, Russell played well tonight for a guy that doesn't have a lot of experience. Like, I thought he was the least sticking out for, say, out of that DB core tonight. The other thing I'll say, guys, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is we got to find somebody other than Matthew Betts to get to the quarterback. Like, you could see them slide everything to him. And yes, he got that one free rush and then he got the sack, but like, I didn't notice Levi Bell tonight. I didn't notice Harris tonight. Like, I didn't notice any other guys bringing any sort of pressure or push. And it makes it hard. Like, you think of, like, even back to those early Lions games with Brent Johnson, you had Chris Wilson on the other side that could at least create some havoc in that backfield. That's one thing I think that also doesn't allow our secondary to be as effective or give them some grace period, is when we can't get to a quarterback like Harris.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Bryce. I think that was a unit that I had huge expectations going into the season, right? And we talked about it a few times this offseason. I talked about it last year of, like, when you have a guy like Matthew Betts and you have a Batman, it's all about, like, can you have a Robin opposite, or even just in the interior of him, and that guy that can kind of have a little bit of pressure on the quarterback and kind of draw the attention of the offensive line. You also notice on the Betts sack tonight, they kind of had to, I don't know if you want to say essentially scheme it up, but they kind of go into the NASCAR package. They have 3 defensive ends on the field, so they kick in Betts into the interior of the defensive line. He's able to get a mismatch on the interior offensive lineman. And outside of that, he didn't really get much pressure, which is unfortunate. You mentioned Hayden Harris as well, young Canadian. I know they're excited about. In the few snaps that he was able to get out after Betts, like he wasn't really noticeable, which is unfortunate. And Sione and Bell, as you mentioned, Bryce, were very unnoticeable, which is concerning.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the defensive stats here. Colden 8 tackles, TJ Lee 8 tackles, Finley 6.
Not good. If the secondary is that's terrible. Oh my god.
In your defensive line, it drops off there. Like, all like Hayden Harris 1 tackle, Parker McKenna had 1. I don't think he played that much, but Nathan Cherry 1, Jonah Tavai, didn't notice him tonight. Levi Bell didn't notice him tonight. I mean, all preseason we heard about how this defensive line and this defense was, turning it up at camp. They didn't dress that much in the preseason either. Very little reps for them in the preseason. So this was basically like their first game. I mean, it's tough, man. It's a lot of questions coming in. Let's blow this up a little bit so we get better view of things. Yeah, I'm still kind of settling in. I told you guys I take these losses very personally.
Yep.
And especially
and we're gonna
against
hear
the Riders. Oh, we're gonna hear, of course.
Yeah,
and we're gonna hear that Nathan Rourke can't win in Regina. Nathan can't win in Winnipeg. Until he does, we're gonna keep hearing it. But like, I don't put this on Nathan tonight. Or the offense. The defense couldn't stop anything tonight.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing. Speaking of the offense, guys, like we all talked about in our group chat that we've got about, man, this offensive line, what they're taking into the game tonight, like just having Una as a backup, this is really worrisome. I didn't have it on my bingo sheet that our receivers were going to get this banged up. Like losing, Seven McGee, and then obviously Katoy's one to me is the worst out of that. Like looking the worst because it was so innocent. And the first thing that went through my mind, and I hope it isn't this, is I was like, is it an Achilles? Because it looked like he planted and went to push off, and it like looked like he got kind of that old saying of, hey, it looks like someone shot him in the foot because he just kind of hopped up and stayed up and then fell. Man, I really hope we don't lose Katoy. But I will say this, another guy that impressed me tonight was Kieran Passant. Like he made some really clutch catches, and I think he's a guy that could be a serious guy that has to come in and play some serious reps now for this unit, and more so than maybe they were initially expecting.
Yeah, and that Katoy injury had bigger impact because it brought Una into the lineup. And when did the Riders start getting their pressure on Rourke? After Katoy went out and Una came in.
They also, that's why Bond was in the game as well, right? It's kind of like that tight end H-back. I know people kind of wondering what's going on there. You also saw in the last series, James Butler having to line up out wide, right? So when you only dress, I believe it was 6 receivers coming into the game, you lose 2 of them. You only have 4. So you're having to be creative with some of your packages, with whether it's at times they had 3 backs with Pickett in there. They had Horvath and JB. So one that we'll probably have to keep an eye on in terms of Katoy's seriousness and elevations next week, right? This is why you drafted a Nate DeMontiac. I know he's injured still, but Nick Senecal as well, who impressed in the preseason. Ken, those guys. I like that you mentioned the Kieran Passant, who's probably going to step into that third, fourth role receiver. But as you said, Bryce, like Katoy does so much more outside of just a receiver role, right? He's a big blocker in the run game. Like it's going to be missed snaps for sure, depending on how serious it is for sure.
I wonder if they
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, I wonder if you see one guy in that take up some of that Katoy stuff, which is Xander Horvath, when it comes to blocking, finding ways to get him involved in that role to maybe limit some of that blow from the Katoy injury, depending on what it is. But it's definitely going to be an interesting juggling situation, because also you got to play that ratio factor now, right? Now your idea potentially of, 4 starting Americans is changed drastically because you don't have the Canadian receivers the same way that you initially thought you did.
They still got DeMontiac and Senecal that they can utilize
once they're back. Yeah, once DeMontiac's back and Senecal gets his opportunity, that's where you're gonna have, but then it's gonna be okay, like how much is that kid ready to play that many snaps?
Yeah, let's take a look at go ahead.
Regular season too, right? It's gonna jump up that much more. Not to discredit anything from the preseason, Chase Bryce and everything that they did, but that's also a different, as we all 3 of us know, a different level than regular season action and the number ones on that side. So as much as I'm hopeful for those guys being able to step into those shoes early on, it's still, I think, much more of a question mark than a certainty.
Yeah. Let's take a look at some offensive stats. Nathan Rourke, 24 for 37. A lot of those were desperation passes in garbage time there, but not garbage time, but on that final drive. 330 yards. So not a bad game from Nathan, but he did have a couple throws where he was lucky that the pick 6 near the end of the first half there. That was a bad throw and could have really put the Lions in a big hole coming out of the second half. And there was a couple other ones where he, probably would have liked back. Didn't throw for any touchdowns. Had a long pass of 40 yards, and we'll switch it over to Trevor Harris here, who had a monster night. 30 of 36, 417 yards, 3 touchdowns. Long pass of 52 yards, 11.6 yard average. But I mean, when you give Trevor Harris all day to just sit there and cycle through his receivers, and half the time he didn't even need to cycle through his receivers. His first, second looks were wide open.
Here's one thing too, Brian, looking at these stats, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but you go back to BC and you look at the rushing yards.
Yeah, Nathan
leading by a mile. And we talked about, the rushing games didn't look great. Ouellette still almost had 70 yards and averaged 4 a carry. That puts you in a lot more second and manageables for that offense. And again, with a quarterback like Trevor Harris, it's like playing prime Danny Mac. That ball is coming out super quick. He knows where he's going with it. Like, even that it's not a 100-yard game, and maybe we didn't see the big runs from Ouellette, even that just, hey, we're getting 4 yards when we give him the ball as an offensive play caller. It's like, this is great because now I'm in I don't have to get into our deep drop back game. I can stay in our quick game because we're in so many second and manageables.
Yeah, like Lauren said, he gets the ball off so quick. His first read was usually open. That's going to make for a long night. I mean, if you can't get to the quarterback, if you can't get pressure on him, and he's allowed to just pick and choose off his first or second reads, it's going to be a long night for you. I don't care who you're playing.
I think the other worry is when I mentioned in the group chat, like, when is Benny going to start to make adjustments? They made adjustments, started blitzing, and that was still not getting home, which is the concerning part. When you're starting to send extra guys and that's not getting home. Now, whether we find out 8-10 weeks from now, Saskatchewan has the best offensive line in the league clearly this year or something, maybe it's another story. But I really don't feel like the Saskatchewan Roughriders were that much better than the defensive line for the BC Lions tonight. It's just like, for whatever reason, I guess the Riders were winning their matchups tonight.
Yeah.
One thing too, I think BC's D-line didn't do a good job of, and this is just something, again, Cole, you'll know this from playing as well. If rushers can't get home to you because you're getting rid of the ball so quick, the next thing they're taught is get their hands up. I didn't see a lot of that from BC tonight, where like you saw a lot of deflections on Nathan when he was trying to get the ball out quick. There was a screen. There were a couple passes he even threw down the middle where they were getting tipped. I didn't see a lot of that where we're seeing batted balls out of BC. If you know you're not going to get to Harris because he's getting it out in 2 seconds or less to the first read, get your hand up, get in the way of the passing lane in some capacity. And I just didn't see a lot of that from the Lions D front tonight.
Yeah, the other guy that I think we could mention as well, the big offseason addition that I think we were all pretty excited to see in a Lions uniform, is Casey Sale was virtually unheard from tonight. And that's one that hopefully over time, I know as well, like some of those interior guys you mentioned, Brian, like Jordan Tavai was a little bit more quiet tonight. More often than not, a lot of those interior guys are going to do some of the dirty work that we don't maybe see on first watch or kind of from the TV copy. And afterwards, you can go back and kind of see that they were doing their job or their 112th. But that being said, I still have a much higher expectation for not only Casey Sales, but Jonah Tavai. So I think those guys, as the season goes on, hopefully they're able to continue to progress and hopefully and start to affect the game.
Casey Sales not even showing up on the stat sheet. So there you go. We had that comment from who was it? Qman64. Barry Hill cost us the chance at OT. What a terrible decision on the Rouge. Possibly. I mean, there's no guarantee it would have rolled out, but for sure he should have let it drop.
I'm curious what you guys think of the pass interference on Ben Hladek on something that I thought was Heather actually mentions it right there, so it's actually perfect timing. Shout out to Heather. But I thought personally it was kind of AJ trying to create a little bit more separation than Ben Hladek. Now, I know it's unfortunate, is the letter of the law is you can't create any contact past 5 yards. So that does kind of, Hladek essentially is in the wrong doing there. But on a 1st and 20, and they get let off the hook like that, it would have been 2nd and 20 as the ball went over
huge. It was huge.
Everybody's head, and they go down to score the winning drive. To me, I could only imagine. I would love to be a fly on the wall at Brian's house, but I was pretty fired up at that one. That one got me out of my seat of like, especially because they didn't initially challenge it, and Trevor was pretty upset with the referee. And I was like, man, like, come on, Trevor, that is pretty weak to be trying to call for that. They get the replay, they throw the challenge flag, and it's like, we're really not going to get this, are we? And it's like, I understand by the letter of the law, you can't make contact after 5 yards. To me, it kind of looked like AJ Lett was the guy that was trying to create separation more so than Ben Hladek, I believe, was the guilty party that was trying to slow him down from running his route.
I honestly felt that was more offensive pass interference because of exactly what AJ led, and I may get lit up for that, but he legitimately runs into Ben Hladek. He doesn't even try and avoid it. He goes right into his chest and then bounces off and then starts looking for the call. The other thing for me with it is if you're going to call it, and they call it PI, like I would have almost called that illegal contact.
Yeah.
Like not a PI call. It was illegal contact. PI is the ball is in the air and you interfere with it.
That's the thing I didn't understand about the challenge. Like they were challenging for pass interference because illegal contact isn't
a 5-yard penalty. And
yeah. And it was not pass interference.
No.
If anything, it was illegal contact, but like, I wonder if that was coached. We need 20 yards. Let's try and get like let's try and get it. Let's try and get a first down here off the penalty. Just run into a guy 10 yards down the field and see if we can get it.
And who better to pick on in that situation? Like if you're going to do something like that potentially, because I'll be honest, there are calls like that designed. AJ Ouellette is not generally running a 30-yard seam route. So who's he going to get lined up on? Ben Haladic, who's now going to play him in space down the field. Let's create as much murkiness to this as we can, run into him, and Trevor get the ball in that area.
Yeah. Here's another good point by Heather, because I counted a few of these myself. There was one where the guy was at least 2 yards offside on his waggle. And, you know, we see that all the time in the Canadian Football League, so I'm not going to rag on it too much. But it was on a key drive in the game that I noticed this. And, you know, it happens all the time. But, like, it drives me nuts, too, when they don't call that stuff.
I think it's easier as well, Brian. Like, if it goes both ways, it got called on us, I believe. So, right, it's like, if it gets called on us, it's kind of like, as you said, Brian, it happens from time to time, right? Where they get a little bit of maybe, you know, half a yard, even maybe a yard head start, because it's not called every time. So if it's going against us, it's like, okay, well, at least call them on their BS. The other one that I wanted to run by you guys was the challenge. And I think it was put up on the screen that I think Buck Pierce last year was 1 for 7 challenging plays, now 1 for 8 in his career. I'm curious of what the process is. What we usually hear is that, like, somebody upstairs, whether that's a specific person that's just in charge of looking for replays and kind of paging down to the coach to challenge the play, because if there is somebody that has that job, they should be fired, because I don't know what they saw, number one. And number two, Buck Pierce was right there. The play happened on the BC Lions sideline, and it was very clear and obvious that no Lion got close to recovering the football. I shouldn't say not close to, because Darnell Sankey and a few other defenders were around, but it was very clear and obvious that Dell Duncan Busby got on the football. The other bummer is that when the ball is not bouncing your way, we saw it a few times tonight. I think there was 2 times that the BC Lions forced fumbles and were unable to jump on the football, where, you know, who knows what could have happened. We're playing, you know, the what if game, but where possession could have changed, points could have been switched the other way. But that was one that I was kind of curious of why Buck was challenging that in a fourth quarter with losing a timeout and losing your challenge.
Yeah, that I called it on Twitter right away. It was a horrible decision to challenge that. And, you know, that we were going to possibly need that timeout, and certainly we could have used an extra timeout going down the stretch there. But yeah, like you, I wonder who makes that decision, because they're feeding him some bad information if they told him to challenge that, because it was clear and obvious who recovered the ball. So yeah, I didn't get that challenge, and, you know, we ended up needing that timeout, but not that it would have made it. You know what else drove me nuts is the last play of the game. I don't get, like, you're close enough to throw that ball into the end zone and let Hatcher or McInnes try and go up and grab it. Like, what are you doing throwing it down to the 20? I get it, you're trying to get a lateral, but how often is that successful, right? Like, I'd rather just take my chance and let McInnes or Hatcher try and go up and get one.
Well, and the thing is, if you take the chance, at least there's an opportunity where PI gets called at some point, right? Like,
again, yeah.
You look at Lule, and what was it, the 2010 West semifinal, rolls out left and fires it up into the back of the end zone for Arsenault, and he goes up and gets it. Like, there's a lot of area back there, and given where you were, you had an opportunity to do that. I didn't, and to throw it, and I get this again, I get the lateral concept. You're throwing it to a guy that played linebacker in junior in Jacob Bond. Like, he does, and again, this is where I'll give Bond a little bit of slack here. He gets thrust into playing like an H-back receiver role, like you kind of said there, Cole. He came out of junior as a linebacker. He's not going to be the guy you want to throw that ball to. If anybody, you're throwing it to Riley Pickett or one of these other guys that's been a little bit more comfortable catching Nathan's passes. But still, throw it up to McInnes or Hatcher in the back of the end zone and have Berryhill standing behind in case there's a tip or a volley off of it. But throwing it down underneath and trying to run the lateral play, like, if you were down 1 point, then maybe there's a question, because you could always do the lateral flip and punt it through the back of the end zone and bounce it or hold it in there. But not when you're trying to throw a Hail Mary because you're down 4.
Yeah, I thought it was silly as well. And unfortunately, it kind of comes down to circumstances, right? Bond being put into that situation probably prematurely, way before he's even ready to kind of even more on Bryce, right? Like, he was a guy that only played, I believe, one year of high school football before going to the Okanagan Sun, right? So a guy that's really an unmoldable piece of clay that's been kind of transformed into this position. and one that, Brian, you and I talked with Andrew on Wednesday night about the composure of Corey Mace and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And to me, the coaching battle was clearly won by the Riders tonight. And you see with like the Q-Man says here, like it was a Buck Pierce call on the challenge. Well, if it was a Buck Pierce call, that was a terrible call on the challenge. I don't care what what he saw or what he was thinking. And then there, like late game situations, right, where maybe you're thinking a little bit too cute opposed to what Bryce is saying, right? With all the other variables, a lateral, you probably have like less than, let's say, 10% chance, and that's being generous, right? A 50-50 ball is a greater chance than the 10% chance of a lateral happening. And then you throw in the chance of a PI that probably ups your probabilities there. So it's like, why not go with the play that's maybe more especially called in that scenario more often than not?
Pass interference gets called so much in this league. Like your chances of getting that call are pretty freaking high if it's even close.
So to me, that was another one we saw in the West Final, right? A few times where Buck Pierce probably got out-coached, and no fault of his own, right? He's still a young coach going into his second year, just starting his second year, where Corey Mace is much more seasoned as a head coach. But that's one where you're going to have to, that comes into play, as Bryce knows, as a coach. Especially at that level, right? It's one thing at, the amateur level, at the junior football level, at even college level. But even as you get into pro, it becomes even that much more important to put your players in the right positions. And tonight, I think Corey Mace did a better job.
I just want to get this out there. We got 154 people in here. So if you want to participate in the show, the best place to do it is on YouTube or Facebook. There's our YouTube address. The Facebook address is at the top of the screen here, and that will allow you to get your chats in. We don't accept chats on X. So if you're watching on X, head over to one of those two sites and participate, because we are doing this show for you guys, the fans. Okay. Let's kind of look at I want to look at the rushing stats here.
Yeah, like Bryce said, not good when your quarterback's your leading rusher. I think they kind of got away from the run game too. I think at times they were having some success. Unfortunately, game script, right, probably comes into play too, right, Bryce? When you're down 14 rip, you tend to have to kind of abandon the run game a little bit. But
only handed the ball off 12 times.
Yeah, that's like when I look at the Lions run game tonight and watching it, like it seemed there was no patience in it. It was, again, you got down 14-0. You didn't get, like, you use the first quarter in a lot of ways to establish the run game. What's going to work? What's not going to work? How do we come back to it later on? When you get one drive, you're then playing catch up 14-0. It's hard because now you're going, okay, we got to get into move the ball. We got to get some chunk plays. We got to find a way to seize a bit of that momentum back from the Riders. You don't do that running 3 and 5 yard run plays. Like you don't. And that's where you watch Saskatchewan and how they tempoed it out. When they were up, they were turning and handing it to Ouellette. And as the Lions started to get back into it, then you saw a bit of the change in their offense philosophy. And it was, okay, we need to throw the ball a bit more. I didn't find I don't know about you guys, but our run game wasn't very creative either. Like it seemed very simplistic. It was either inside zone or some gap pull stuff. The most creative thing we saw where, hey, we're running two guys across in jet motion and Nathan's going to kind of spin out and do a bootleg. Well, one of Nathan's best attributes is his athleticism. You got to move the pocket. We didn't see a lot of slides and half rolls from Nathan. We saw a couple rollouts, but we didn't see a lot of it. And I think sometimes for Nathan, when he gets out and can use his legs more that way, it actually helps him as a pocket passer later on in the game, because those DNs now can't just pin their ears and really collapse that pocket. They actually have to respect the fact of him potentially going outside.
I thought the tackles actually played pretty well tonight.
They did. And Woodruff, I thought, looked good.
Every all the pressure that they were getting was coming right up the middle. So
yeah, Couture had a tough night.
Couture had a tough night. Had that face mask penalty, which was also a critical play. But again, when Una came in the game, I started noticing the pressure got a little more frequent from the Riders.
The thing about 12 attempts as well is that's not winning you any games come November, October outdoors. God forbid we don't get home field advantage. The Riders played right into the way that they like to win football games, and that's to play good defense, let Trevor Harris, if he's on that night, obviously sling the ball around, but on any given night, they are very comfortable with just dropping back, handing the football off, and letting their offensive line road great for them. And that's something the BC Lions is that kind of, where they've been coined or maybe unfairly, like, the dome team, they're this cute offensive finesse team. And it's one that maybe you have to question of like, do they have to change a little bit of their identity? I don't think too much, because they were one of the most efficient offenses, I think, in CFL history last year. So do what you do. But when it comes to winning playoff games, they need to adapt and be more comfortable in that situation. As Bryce said, right? Like the lack of patience in, a run. We heard about the two-back system, right? And I think this is one that for me is maybe the counter argument of why I don't like a two-back system is I think for running backs, especially like bell cow running backs, is that the first, say, 3-4 carries, they're not maybe feeling the game as yet, right? Of how hard the defense is flowing, where their cutback lanes are, and being able to feel the game a little bit more. Where you look at, was it 9 carries for James Butler? He's probably not getting going until carry, 4, 5, 6. And then you're kind of doing him disservice because he's not in the game until halftime or wherever it may be when he's getting those carries. And Xander Horvath is clearly not in the game with all of his carries because they came in short yardage, right? And I think one that we all do want to see him weaponize and do have a role in the offense. And maybe now this is where it comes with some of the injuries in the receiving room, as you said, Bryce, right? Like I would much rather see Nathan be thrown to Xander Horvath or James Butler rather than a Jacob Bond. So I think getting those guys maybe more involved in terms of maybe coming out of the backfield, we could see that. But we have to see that run game start to have a bigger impact as we go through the season.
And here's the other thing for me, like this offense last year was heavily RPO based, and you can see they wanted to do it again. There were some awkward handoffs in this game where it looked like they wanted to still take the ball from Nathan. And I think, again, that plays into, okay, to run an RPO successfully, you do still have to run the ball. That's what sucks those linebackers into the box. And I'll go back to a prime example of an interesting two-back system a little bit in Lions history was when we had Ian Smart and Joe Smith. Like you had the one back that did a lot of it, Joe Smith, but then you had the ability to run the change of pace. And you think about the Grey Cup game where Buck was the quarterback. Joe Smith is pounding Montreal. And then they slide in Ian, Smart there, and they run basically a fake dive to Joe Smith and a little pitch option out to Smart, takes it around and runs it in for 30 yards for the touchdown. That's how you can do things with two backs. But you also have to your point, Cole, give your backs the ability to actually get their legs underneath them and the O-line the opportunity to actually run block, because that's the other thing. I thought our tackles played well, but a lot of the interior pressure with Couture and Una and even Schlugger had some problems at different points. If you're not running the ball, those guys pin their ears back and just go because they don't have to worry about, hey, do I have to get it? No, we're running. Okay, they're passing again. We're just full in pass rush mode and pinning their ears back. It makes it hard for Nathan to operate from a murky pocket that way.
Yeah, I thought another guy that we heard about all offseason as well, having a pretty good camp and a newcomer, was Brandon Yates. There was a few times he gave up some pressures. They were definitely confused on a few times where the Riders defensive line stunted. I believe that was the one pressure where Couture and him weren't on the same page, and the interior defensive line kind of split the two of them. So one that they have to find continuity through the season, right? Didn't play a lot in preseason action, so somewhat of a new shift, new make interior offensive line, and those guys are gonna have to gel throughout the season. I've been a little bit harder on Couture, I think, for the last few years. Is he's a guy that makes pretty good money in the CFL, one of the more higher paid centers. Now I know he's a BC boy, all this stuff, and it was unfortunate. I think a few years ago when he did get injured and Tyler Packer came in, I was kind of on the Tyler Packer bandwagon a little bit of maybe this could be the next guy, next new center that could take over. Unfortunately, Tyler Packer ends up, I believe, retiring from football. But the Lions, I think, at some point need to invest in kind of, Nathan Rourke's center to go with him for the next, 4 or 5 years to kind of be that guy in the interior of the offensive line to lead things, because I think Couture's better days are behind him.
Got a question from Serena. Thoughts on the missed roughing the passer call in the last play of the game? Apparently a hit to the head on Rourke. Buck and Rourke said no explanation given by the refs on AM 730. I did see that they were trying to get the refs' attention. I didn't know what it was for. I haven't actually seen it myself, so I'd have to go back and look at it. But obviously, the league didn't think it was reviewable.
Does anyone know that maybe is in the chat that's watching post-game if Buck or anybody gave any updates on the injured players, specifically maybe Katoy and McGee? It'd be nice to know, because maybe they don't know until they get back to Vancouver, but they do play. It's not that much earlier, but Friday next week. So, and I think it's in Hamilton as well. So somewhat of a shorter week, you could say. So no one sooner rather than later would be better for sure.
So I got a question for both of you guys. A little bit off the game itself, but still there is. And I wore this hat specifically for that reason. Can you guys make out that this is an Okanagan Sun
Okanagan Sun. I was gonna
logo?
ask you, Bryce.
Like,
yeah,
it's an
silver
orange
lettering.
trim. Yeah, exactly. I'm just curious because I'm sorry. Like, I get where they're going with the heritage, going back to the team with the silver helmets in those 90s and early 2000s era of BC Lions football. But go orange on the number with a silver trim, or go back to how it was. You got black as your home. Make the number black with orange trim like that. I honestly, watching that game, like, especially when the sun hit a player, it was like, I have no idea who that is out there. Like, I'm guessing, like, some of the guys you've seen enough move around on the field, hey, that's Ben Haladic or that's Matthew Betts or, so on. But for guys that I had no idea, like Russell and some of these other guys, I was like, who is that again? Because I just couldn't make it out. And I'm watching on, an HD TV, 4K and not even like trying to see it as time's going live speed and having to comment on it.
So here's what I said. I tweeted this during the game. Orange numbers with silver trim would have been a home run on these Pacific Frost jerseys. I feel for the play-by-play guys. Sorry, but the orange trim on the silver numbers isn't working. So there you go. And I'm sure I noticed too that Rod Smith was delaying on some of his calls, trying to figure out who the player was as well. There was a little delay until he saw the replay of a closer up look at it.
It's an easy switch, guys, because the replica's already got black writing on it. You could just put the black inside the number and it would look, close enough. Like, you can make it work. I'm just saying.
Black or orange. I just think going with the orange would be a little cleaner. But
I agree with you. You sent me those mock-ups that someone did there. I sent them in to you, Brian, on Twitter.
I did those on ChatGPT.
I know, but like, they look like, with the orange number, it looks still fine. It looks like a good jersey. It's just it's hard with the silver to the silver to the silver.
And it's historic too. They used to have the orange numbers on the white jerseys, right? So anyway, I don't think they're going to change them. Let's get to some questions here. Well, the numbers are atrocious. There's a comment.
So we got our first troll of the season here, boys.
McGee had his high. Oh, do we? Where's that?
That's okay. I'm keeping all my receipts till end of the year. I had them last year, and I was ready to just unleash them. Unfortunately, we got our just hearts stabbed out last year, so I'm hopeful this year.
Yeah. Of course, it's a Bomber fan too.
We'll keep those receipts, and hopefully this year we can cash them in.
If you think Nathan Rourke was the problem tonight, then you really should study football a little closer. But McGee had his high foot wrap, so I'm assuming it's an ankle, probably a high ankle sprain, maybe.
He was on the card as well too, which is not great.
He looked pretty upset about it, so hopefully it's only a sprain and not something torn.
I'm not sure if maybe the Riders locker room is a little further. I know that sometimes does come into play. Maybe they just don't want to have guys walk that far to the locker room. So maybe hopefully that's the case rather than serious. But as you said, Brian, he was, I believe, upset, the towel kind of over his head a little bit and looked to be not too happy.
Usually when they're upset like that, it's a little more serious and they know it. Reads on RPOs. Nathan and his backs weren't seeing the same thing. Yeah, Bryce commented on that. I noticed it too a couple times during the game. The handoffs weren't very clean. Again, right? That goes back to, like, did these guys play enough in the preseason? Like, I know you're practicing these plays in camp and all the rest of it, but just, and you had a 2-week layoff. Is some of this a little bit of game rust? I don't know. I want to talk about short yardage. It looks like Horvath is going to be the guy. We were wondering what they were going to do there.
Mm-hmm. Good call.
I thought they might have gone with Chase Bryce to start with and see how that went, but Horvath did okay. I'm not sure that it was perfect, but he's a big guy, tall guy. Hopefully he can handle that job, but I'm happy that it wasn't Nathan, put it that way.
Yeah, I think no offense to Bryce, but I would much rather have Xander Horvath in that role than Chase Bryce. I think just Chase's stature isn't really kind of made for the prototypical short plunging quarterback. He's a little bit more shorter. I don't want to say like pudgier. I think it's unfair to Chase, but Xander Horvath is like, if you see that guy in some of the photos, like he's a Greek goddess, man. Like having that guy, and if he can fall forward, get a little bit of a surge, I think maybe is still probably a little bit uncomfortable with like the, as you said, Bryce, like it is a little bit of an art of like the quarterback sneak and having to kind of receive the snap and surge ahead in one kind of smooth, continuous motion, opposed to receiving the snap, not getting any forward progress, trying to get forward progress as the offensive line is kind of getting pushed back or whatever happens. So it's something that I think over the time of the season, hopefully he can learn this, because he's like, I really feel like it, especially maybe because he wears 34, but he's like David Mackey light. Like he just looks like him, the way he runs, his mannerisms a little bit. So I think he could excel in that role. And as you said, Brian, I'm excited that we're going to take a few less hits off Nathan.
Hey, Pick Freddie, you're on timeout, bud. Like, we're talking about the Riders and the Lions here. I don't give a shit about the Bombers or what you think about the Lions. So bye-bye.
See you later.
You know who I am kind of envious of are the Riders and the Tiger Cats, because Jake Dolagata and Tommy Stevens.
Yes.
Damn, like Stevens is so good at it. Like he's one huge, like he literally just has to take the snap and kind of lean forward and he gets the yard, but he's athletic enough. Like he had that one tonight where he took it around the edge. And then you look at Jake Dolagata, who we had in BC, has gone to Hamilton and made a living out of it, doing the QB sneak down there in Hamilton, who we'll see next week. Like it's going to be interesting to see. Like I would really start working with obviously Horvath, and then to follow that up, I'd go with, Salter as another guy, because he's skinny enough and small enough that he might be able to weasel his way into some of those cracks if he understands how to like take that snap and go forward at the same time.
I also know it's not more traditional, but I didn't mind them just go under center I formation, have Horvath at that fullback set. That was the first touchdown. I believe I guess it was both JB's touchdowns where they kind of ran basically like power left or lead left essentially, and then they did the other way as well with JB kind of going over the top. So I think you could also be kind of a tendency breaker, not having to do with the typical quarterback sneak, and kind of relying on some of that two back sets as well.
This is a good comment by Q-Man here. Chase is Danny McManus. Not an athlete other than arm talent. I think he might have a little bit more mobility than McManus, but I think that's a funny comment. Let's get this stuff out of the way right now, because I'm seeing a few of these in the chat. Should they fire Benavides at this point? Benavides needs to go. Folks, this is game one. Nobody's going to be firing their defensive coordinator in game one of a season for first of all. Second of all, we've already talked about how we have new people in the secondary. And for everybody that was complaining in the Western Final last year, how we dropped guys back on that last drive, he was bringing pressure, and Trevor Harris was just beating it, finding open guys in the secondary. Benny is not on the field. Okay. Like guys were wide open, and you're going to have to look at the game film. The Lions are going to have to look at the game film and figure it out. But no, Benavides is not getting fired after the first game of the season. So let's give that a little time to brew a little bit.
I'm going to say this, and this might be a little bit of an early hot take or prediction I've got. When Bull U comes back, I think he's going to take one of the half spots. I think they're going to put him and Jackson back there, because to be honest, both of them are probably two of your better players in the back end. And I think Bull U has enough experience to play corner, to play half, but even half, he was exceptional at Laval as a half. I think him there with Jackson Finley, and maybe he plays your field side half, like that could really, I think, help. And then TJ can play your boundary side. I think that helps out quite a bit. And then maybe one of these guys rolls down to a corner spot potentially.
Yep. No, that's a good point.
I love that, Bryce. I think the other thing that I noticed, I'm not too sure if you did as well, is they did tend to stick with the right side, left side. So they didn't end up going with boundary field side. I think that would be one. If you did end up probably going with maybe a Boyu in the slot, maybe would you tend to stick him into that field? That was where he did traditionally play at Laval. So I love that call. I would love to see the two young Canadians on the field. I'm curious how fast he can get up to speed coming off the injury. It was kind of one that was kind of kept under wraps last year, that I didn't really hear until kind of basically after the year that he tore his ACL. So I was kind of hopeful that maybe he was going to come back at some point. So hopefully surgery went good, recovery's going well, and he's going to be able to be an added addition to the Lions, because after game 1, boys, they are going to need reinforcements, and not many are going to be coming.
And it's not like you're going up against any quarterback that all of a sudden doesn't get rid of the ball, because Bo Levi Mitchell and the way they played against Winnipeg, like Bo Levi looks in midseason form, and he's going to do the exact same thing Trevor Harris does, which is get rid of that ball in less than 2 seconds if he can. And oh yeah, they do also have probably one of the best receivers in the CFL in Kenny Lawler. That's going to be another problem for our young secondary to deal with.
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself heading into the studio here about how Hamilton's up next and how good they looked this week.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit timid about Kenny Lawler, Keandre Smith, and Curly Gittins Jr. Some of the wheat fall coming into town, especially after the secondary look. Lauren mentioned about how McKenna kind of comes in as that Sam linebacker sometimes, and Williams is dropped into that halfback role. He did traditionally play halfback when he was with Saskatchewan before coming to BC, and then BC kind of slid him into that nickel role. For me personally, I don't want to see Deontay Williams play half, especially the way he was abused tonight, because he was on the wrong side of way too many, not only Keandre KSB catches, but Sam Emulos was cooking in the slot as well. So that's when I think Deontay kind of excels a little bit closer to the box, playing that Sam nickel role. We saw him come up on in the run support tonight on AJ Ouellette one time, but in coverage, there was, I don't think, one positivity from Deontay Williams. So I would like to see him kind of stay in the box, a little bit closer to the box, and have a more athletic, younger guy like you kind of get the shot at a halfback spot. But I still feel like, he was on the 6th game for you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So that's one. And then, like, we heard about Jet Elad too, right? Could be a possibility. I would think probably have higher hopes for Boyu coming back and making an impact than Jet Elad. But, rookie draft pick, hopefully maybe he's able to get back up to 100%, and he could be another addition to the secondary. But guys just walking around the street, like, you're not just going out there and finding some CFL free agents like a TJ Lee like you did last year. I like kind of what Bryce said early in the show of, like, why not let go of a guy like Gary Peters, tell him, have like the handshake deal in the parking lot. The NFL guys do it all the time, and keep guys on the practice roster. They say, hey, we're going to cut you. You're going to go through waivers. Stay here. We'll bring you back in 24 hours. There's no hard feelings. Gary Peters, love everything you've done for us. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, you are not healthy. You are damaged goods right now. We will bring you back when you're healthy, and we want to get a better look at some other guys. So unfortunately, that ship has sailed, and we're going to have to hope that GP gets healthy.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to wait 6 games to find out. I'm not even sure what the knee problem was, but obviously it's not right yet. I heard the term cleaned out. So whether it was just some bone chips floating around in there that they went in cleaned out, I don't know.
Which might be more concerning then too, right? Like if it's something like a clean out, you would think, hey, the guy maybe is able to recover a little bit faster. He's showing his age, I feel like, of not being able to get back to 100%, whether there was a setback or not. And then just getting healthy. We talked about it last week. Getting healthy in season, like, that is an extremely hard thing to do, or stay healthy when you're already hurt. And we saw him get abused last year. Like,
this is where I get concerned if we start hearing the word, and Cole, I'll know you'll hear this a lot when they talk about it with the NFL guys like Max Crosby this offseason. Hey, he's got a degenerative knee issue. Like, that's where you get a little concerned, because it's like, are you ever going to be back to 100%? And Gary Peters wasn't a burner when he was 100%, but he was good enough to stay in coverage. Now that you lose that, if that knee doesn't function the way you need to and doesn't fire necessarily the way you want it to, it's a concerning thing. And this is the one thing I'll say about the CFL. It's a little bit different than it was back, again, in, say, 2011. What did the Lions do in 2011 that changed the whole thing from starting 0-5? They made a trade for a premier player and brought in Arlen Bruce, and he brought some fire and everything to that team. Who are the Lions going to go trade for if they start 0-2 going into Kelowna? Like, who are you going to bring in? There's not a pass rusher someone's going to be willing to part with or anything like that to bring in. Like, you've got to kind of hope you find somebody.
I'm not so concerned about the defensive line. I think it's more of a
secondary.
I think it's more of a fact that they didn't play in the preseason. And I just think that was a bad decision.
How much do you guys? I think the unfortunate part though is like how much do you guys think that's going to change? I think Bryce, you see it at the grassroots level of how much football has changed in terms of. I hate to be the old man yelling from the treetop of like how much softer football has gotten. Of like kids aren't in pads all year long, or from when I played and you had to wear full leg pants of like girdle, knee pads. Now you see kids in shells and shoulders and then shorts and stuff like that. And they're not hitting all year round. So it's like. This is starting to become a trend. It was firstly in the NFL, now it's started to kind of trickle into the CFL slowly now, and I'm honestly concerned because I do agree, Brian. Like that does I think have it when there's only 2 games, right? The NFL does have 3, so there's kind of like the extra one. As starters, you're able to maybe get say a quarter more of reps. As starters, a lot of these guys didn't play, and
then they practice for 2 weeks.
And yes,
without
that
playing
too.
again.
And does that hurt you? 100% that hurts you, but. Will that change, especially with all the CFLPA stuff and them wanting to also like keep them protected? And we're starting to see with like the hours that they can practice, all that sort of stuff. So I would be concerned long term if that does change. I think that's something that as an organization you have to look at next year of how much we risk the injury concern, but also risk starting slow. Like that's something that you can't afford to do year after year. You have to make sure that come kickoff of week 1, like you're ready to go. And they were clearly not ready to go.
Comment from Canada West. At the end of the day, it was a 4-point game against one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah.
We're probably fine. And yeah, we said on the show this week, no reason to panic if we lose this game. And there's no reason to panic yet. But we're going into Hamilton next week against a very good offensive team that put up a lot of offense against another good team this week. So yeah, there's reason to be concerned.
I think the one good thing to remember, folks, is that ups and downs, peaks and valleys. We saw the Winnipeg Blue Bombers start the season. Everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, Winnipeg is back!" And the next thing you know, they kind of lay an egg, or maybe I shouldn't say lay an egg, but end up kind of losing to Hamilton pretty good. And how things have changed. Of Jake Ceresna, Willie Jefferson are back, and I don't think they were heard from this week. So. As everybody knows, through a long 21-week season, you're going to have your highs, you're going to have your lows. Definitely not pressing the panic button, but things that we were aware of coming into the year, right? We had the questions of the offensive line. I think through game 1, they kind of checked the boxes of answering some of those questions. The secondary was the next highest question, and that was the farthest thing from answering that question, and is one that we're not getting any help. And as we saw tonight, if Nathan works on the sideline, he is no good to us against Hamilton, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, whoever it is. If they're throwing the ball around and Nathan Rourke is on the sideline, that is a bad thing for us. So
I'll tell you who I'm taking in fantasy next week is Kenny Lawler.
I'll say this to you guys. Like, I think Cole, you summed it up really good earlier in the show where you stated that, the West Final, we felt like we were the better team, and tonight, Saskatchewan, it felt like they were the better team. This didn't feel like a 4-point loss. I know it showed up in the scoreboard and it came down to that. I never felt the Lions really got fully into this game. And I get that the game got close and stuff. It felt more like Saskatchewan kind of let us back into it because it was week 1. It just, to me, like, I felt this was more of a 7, like more of what we saw with the 14-point lead. That's what the game felt like. And it felt like Nathan had to pull some magic to get us back into it. And the defense got some timely stops, because you look at Trevor Harris's numbers. He was 30 of 36. He only missed 6 times. And that's where you saw drives kind of end. And so, there are peaks and valleys, but this is a tough starting stretch when you don't have a solid secondary that is unified yet and gelled yet to go against Trevor Harris and Bo Levi Mitchell on the road before you come back to do your 2-game homestand in Kelowna.
Especially if you're not getting pressure on the quarterback.
Exactly.
That's going to make it real tough.
Bo Levi Mitchell's up next. VA's after that, where everybody in here is aware of the gunslinger VA is as well, right? So like there's no easy teams coming up. Even Edmonton and Cody Fajardo, like they're going to be an underrated passing attack and going to be able to sling the ball around. So like this is 100% the biggest concern for the BC Lions moving forward is the secondary.
Yep. And we talked about the importance of getting off to a good start if you want to have that Western final, right? And it's going to be a big challenge based on what we saw today. It's going to be a challenge. Who's after Edmonton? I think, don't we go to Montreal or something like that? It's like
I can't remember. But the other thing is like, what's going to win the West this year too, right? Like of like 11, 12 wins maybe. Like I know they talked about on the broadcast, right? Like
could be a 500 team, just one game over 500 might win the West, you know?
Yeah, with how important these games are, like
the one thing I will mention is we're done in Regina this year. They got to come to our place twice. So there's time to rectify this. You know, fix our problems. We get them twice at home. You win both of those games, and you put yourself in a pretty good position. I mean, depending on what else happens during the season and what other teams in the West do, but like, you know, for the last couple of years, we've been kind of going to Winnipeg twice or Regina twice, and only getting that one home game against those teams. So, you know, I think we go to Winnipeg twice this year, but I'm not. And again, as we talked about earlier this week, the Lions go to Winnipeg on a short week, with the Bombers coming off a bye. I swear to God, this is like the third year in a row we've had to do that. And I'd like to know who's allowing that to happen in the schedule, because it's bullshit.
Somebody's got pictures of us.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, so to your point earlier, Brian, so they play we played Saskatchewan. So now we go to Hamilton. We come back to Calgary and Edmonton in the Kelowna. Then from that, we've got a bye week, I believe. Yeah, we got a bye after the second touchdown Kelowna game. Then we're in Edmonton on week 7. And then we've got Toronto. Then we've got Winnipeg on the short week. And then after Winnipeg, we've got Hamilton.
I mean, look, over the first couple weeks of the season here, I've been pretty impressed with every team. Except for maybe Ottawa. I think every team, and Ottawa is probably not as bad as they look. That was a tough game to judge with the monsoon that was happening there. And I think eventually they're going to find their way back to Drew Brown, because I'm just not sold on Jake Mayer myself. But I think, you know, every team, East and West, has looked pretty damn good this year. And there's going to be no easy games. There's going to be no free dances on the bingo card. You've got to come to play every night. And if you don't, you're going to find yourself struggling to get a playoff spot, or at least to get a home playoff game, especially in the West. I mean, the West is like, throw the names in the hat and see who comes out, you know.
Can I say one other thing about tonight's game that I thought stood out that we haven't really touched on much of? I didn't think we had good specials tonight, and that killed us in a lot of ways. Like the starting field position for Saskatchewan in a lot of situations was way too favorable and gave them way too many short fields. And then I get Seven McGee goes out, but even our return game, just even the way we were setting things up, did not look like a good cohesive unit. Like defense and specials in a lot of ways. And you know, Cole, you played junior, and you know, you get it as well in Canadian. Specials is such a crucial third of this game. Like people don't realize how important it is. When you're letting Saskatchewan start on their 40 a lot of the time, like you are almost in field goal range and point getting range within like 10, 15 yards with some of the kickers now that we talked about earlier this offseason that can hit from 60 and 55. Like it makes it harder on your team to handle those situations. So it'll be interesting to see if that gets cleaned up as well.
Sorry, Brian, one more thing about the special teams is I think the thing about special teams is people want to maybe not really believe you, or kind of tend to overlook when people say like, oh, special teams is important. It's not, I feel like, all about special teams. It's more about the field position game in the CFL and in the Canadian game, right? And like the lack of being able to take advantage of the field position game tonight for the Lions hurt them, right? As you said, right? The Riders probably started at like the plus 35, 40, like almost on a routine basis, where the Lions, you could tell Berryhill was not very comfortable returning the football. And obviously, not only does Berryhill have to return kicks, that's the argument of like why you don't have McGee like on offense full time, because then that takes away from Berryhill's role on offense as well. And then he's out there, he's tired, and you don't see as much from Berryhill tonight offensively, right? Because he's returning those kicks, he's taking more of his energy and kind of all that stuff from his offensive role and having to use it on special teams, because it is an energizer role, right? Like you're having to kind of return, you're taking all these hits. So that's such a huge factor when Nathan's having to drive 20, 30 more yards than the Saskatchewan Roughriders offense. Like that's a big deal. And Trevor Harris and the offense were not contested tonight. So that's even more of a kick in the you know what, when you know special teams is not being able to win.
Yeah, I made that comment on Twitter tonight that the field position discrepancy was on returns was quite noticeable, and the way Trevor Harris was playing. If he's starting at the 45 or the 50, 40 between the 40 and the 50 on every drive, it's easy work for him. So the Lions definitely need better downfield tackling on those returns. I want to get to some questions now because we got quite a few in here. Any thoughts on if you think Horvath actually got in on the second down and goal? I feel like he broke the plane of the end zone and would have been given more time in the end. I don't think he got in personally. I think the ball never crossed the plane.
Yeah, he needed to reach. He didn't.
Yeah.
He got tentative of putting that ball out. And then you watch James Butler on the next one just hop over and do the LaDainian Tomlinson and shove it out there.
I'm sorry to say, but taking Harris on the over 287 for his passing yards was easy money against our secondary. Well, congratulations on that.
That's like Brian taking Kenny Lawler next week. You got to know your team, I guess.
Yeah. And I also took Hatcher and Passant this week, and they didn't do a lot. So
Serena's got an interesting one in there, Brian, about 7 in Berryhill.
Where can you put it in?
No, I can't.
All right.
There you go. That's it. Yeah.
7's out, and apparently Berryhill's an injury he was playing through too. So that's not good. I would imagine that depending on what Montagnac's status looks like, hopefully he can be elevated back to the roster. And then Seneca, I would imagine, dresses for sure next
Here's a question, Cole and Ryan. Do they bring back
Myala?
Exactly. Do you bring him back because as a Canadian, and is he a guy? He was here. He did well, it looked like, in camp. I think they went with younger guys because of age more than necessarily his play. Is he not one of the first guys Ryan McMaden's on the phone to right now going, hey, get your stuff, get back in here, because we're going to have to, depending on what's going on with 7 and Katoy, like, he'd be my first call.
I think Katoy is probably the big one. I mean, if he's gone, like with you say, maybe an Achilles or something like that, we haven't heard. But if he's going to be 6 gamed or anything like that, I think Hergy Myala is probably a really good choice to bring in. But another guy who I think might get activated now is Jalen Williams, who had a very strong preseason. And for 7 McGee, that could be a good replacement. I can't remember, he was returning kicks. Maybe they go back and circle back to Jalen Darden if 7 McGee's out. Haven't heard him signed anywhere. Maybe they bring him back in and say, hey, we need you to come back and return some kicks. And he's a good option at receiver too. He had some good reps at receiver.
I was going to say that I think they'll lean towards maybe a special teams role more. I think Myala is a great call, and I would even bring him back regardless, because I think of how much of a good preseason he had, some of these injuries happening. But I think the in-house, they're going to feel like they can kind of somewhat replace that role of Katoy with the Pickett's, the Bonds, the 6 offensive lineman packages, right or wrong. And then it's now kind of down to, if Berryhill's injured as well, like that kind of, your 2 returners right there are gone right off bat. So it's like, do you lean, as you said, Brian, to maybe a Jalen Darden, bringing him back? You mentioned, was it Jalen Williams as well, Brian? Was he returning kicks at all during the preseason? I can't remember
if he was. I think it was mainly
Bolden was the other one. Darden and
Bolden,
who they kept Bolden, so maybe he gets activated. Here's the other thing to take into consideration, guys, and the reason why I say, if you bring in Hergy for some of this, right, you have 2 days to practice before you're leaving, basically, for Hamilton. And at least he's going to know the playbook well enough that you can plug and play him in offensive reps, especially if you're like, okay, maybe they don't lean into, hey, we've got to change a little bit and go more true 5R stuff because Katoy's out. Well, that's another way to potentially do it, and lean more into, hey, 2 back sets with Horvath and Butler in those situations to kind of make up for it in the run game that way, and use Horvath more as a fullback.
It was pretty brutal, I can't lie, Bryce, seeing them in the fourth quarter, and they're running 5 wide sets, and James Butler's out wide, and Jacob Bonds, the other receiver, waggling down the line. I'm like,
and Nathan's an empty. It was no, this is not going to go well, guys.
Yeah. Literally, I was like, we are that down bad, man. This is not a good sign. But the good thing is that, as you said, right, those depth pieces, Kieran Passant stepped up tonight. Can he step up in a bigger role? He'll have more targets, most likely next game. But, you can't really rely on that. Like that, I feel like at times they were kind of like, it was Nathan or Bus kind of having to make some of these plays. It would be nice to just have some of these receivers getting separation, Nathan having to just get balls out and letting them make plays. So one to keep an eye on. But it was nice to see Justin McInnes get up to Justin McInnes things tonight for sure. That would maybe be one of the other positives.
Here's an interesting thought by Q-Man. Mario Alford is available. I'm not sure
Yeah.
they would go that route, but I mean, that's a proven returner who's done some good things in this league. I don't know what it would cost to get him here and what the cap situation's like, but he's not playing right now. So
It's a great point.
yeah, and a very solid and good returner. Could come back to haunt the Riders if we end up facing them in the playoffs and he takes one back for a touchdown. Just a 2-practice week ahead, Tuesday, Wednesday, then head to Hamilton Thursday. Run game non-existent. Mayala would be my first call as GM. Silas Bolden was ahead of Darden in camp as receiver and kick returner, and they still have him on the practice roster, so that's probably the move they're going to make. Yeah, and Mayala is Canadian 2 for the ratio, yes. So depending on what happens to Katoy, I think if he's going to be out any length of time, I think Hergy Mayala would be a solid phone call to make before somebody else scoops him up.
I think Berryhill will probably be the interesting one to monitor in practice. The full participants, limited and stuff like that will be one to really monitor, because it would be interesting if they had to come down to it and maybe start, Passant, and if Berryhill can't go, would they have to start Mayala as well? And things would be, they'd have 3 Canadians, but we'd be really testing the depth with 2 receivers already having to step up in week 3.
The other thing to keep an eye on these 2 days of practice is how many of these offensive linemen that were hurt get back on the roster, because I'm sorry, but like having Una as your only backup offensive lineman is a little bit scary.
Well, the thing is, Brian, I think they are more traditionally comfortable with only dressing the few times they will dress 7 offensive linemen and dress the extra swing offensive tackle. A lot of times last year, they just went Pearson as the 6th offensive lineman and wouldn't dress any extra offensive tackles. To me, as a guy that's a big...
Pearson's a valuable player, though, right? Because he can play multiple positions.
Yes.
He can step in for Couture. He can step in at guard. He's not a tackle, but like...
in a pinch, he could play tackle as well if it really came down to it. But the thing is, like, in you guys know, like in NFL circumstances, like the Bills are not afraid to dress like 9, 10 offensive linemen on game days. And it's like, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. I'm curious as well, Brian, of like when it comes to Isaiah Cage, some of those other veteran tackles, swing tackles, when they get healthy, like especially with Dejon Allen being, his injury history and stuff like that, do they tend to dress one of them? But definitely one that's like, man, it gives you, and that's just like, it comes down to Bryce, as you know, as a coach, like you can only dress so many guys on game day. Like you only have those certain amount of roster spots. And if offensive linemen aren't playing special teams, like that's where you have to kind of pick and choose. You look at the receivers, they only dress 5 receivers or 6 receivers, tonight. You lose 2 of them and you're only down to 4. And it's like, well, does DeMontignac play special teams? No. Senecal, no. They don't play really much special. They don't provide you value of special teams. So that's why they see all the defensive backs dressed with, I believe it was the 2 reserve safeties, all the linebackers, because they're going to play your special teams roles. So one that'll be huge to monitor in terms of just the depth in the offensive line.
Joseph was asking about Nate DeMontignac for receiver. He's still hurt with a shoulder. I don't know when he's going to be back, and he's a rookie, right? Like he's going to have to cut his teeth a little bit, and before he's depended on for a lot of reps. But he'll definitely be an option when he's healthy, but he's not quite there yet. Lauren says Schluger can slide out to tackle if necessary due to injury. That's a good point. He played a little bit there last year as well. Saw on Twitter all those extra American linemen are healthy. They're just insurance. I'm not sure what you're referring to on that.
Well, if some of them are, I'm pretty sure I want to say Isaiah Cage is actually a little bit banged up, but I think he maybe is referencing maybe a few of them, and it could be on the
Donovan
one game
and stuff like that.
Yeah, one game that are kind of like healthy scratches essentially.
But also on the practice reports, they didn't practice this week. So
I was going to say that I think they're actually banged up.
Yeah, they are hurt. Although in the case of McNamee, I don't know. I think they're playing some roster shuffling with McNamee just to keep him around, the kicker.
Yeah.
Okay.
207 tonight. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate it. It's we would have rather be on a winning post-game show, but it's nice so many people joined us.
If we get 207 for a loss, how many people will we get in here after a win?
Okay.
If this is a good time to tell you 208 people now, head over to our YouTube channel and please subscribe if you haven't done so already. I think we're approaching 120. We might have passed that. I haven't checked lately, but it really helps the show grow, gets us out into the algorithm, gets more eyes on the site, and we're trying to make this as big as we possibly can for you guys. Next year with the zone coming in and YouTube, there's going to be some creator content, I'm told, so we would definitely like to be considered for that on a official league basis as a fan contributor. So the more subs we can get, the better for the show, and we appreciate it. Well,
Lauren makes a good point about there's always more to talk about after a loss.
There's always more people to complain.
That's what I mean.
There's no doubt about that. Yeah, my wife will tell you she made the comment to me tonight. Well, I can see it's going to be a long season, a stressful season. That's what she said to me, because I get quite animated during the game. So
ups and downs, peaks and valleys.
Yeah, I'm trying this year. I'm trying to rein it in a little bit. I think the people that sit around me at the games are a little scared sometimes.
I think Bryce maybe can relate a little bit. I'm probably similar to you, Brian, on like a Bills basis. When the Bills are on, my heart rate is through the roof. The Lions are like my little bit of like, I actually stay calm. I can kind of write a little bit of notes during the game. I try to have like another feed on my phone, the TSN, so I can kind of watch some of the replays. So I'm a little bit more composed, I feel like. But as I said, fourth quarter, that pass interference or the challenge on the pass interference, I got up with the couch. I was like, man, like this is totally going to cost us the football game, and just such a BS way to end the first week we see the Lions.
Yeah, what happens if that penalty doesn't happen, right? They're first and 10, 20.
Second and 20 after that, incomplete.
They'd be second and 20 was incomplete.
Yeah,
so now you're
20 after that. So
and backed up into their own end.
Yeah.
What ifs, but
just never seems to bounce our way in Regina lately, or Winnipeg for that matter. But hopefully we'll get that turned around. Okay, Chad, if you got any questions, get them in here. We are running just over, coming up on an hour and a half for the post game show here, which is about an hour more than you're getting from the radio broadcast. So we hope you appreciate this, and yeah, we'll keep doing them for the road games. Home games, we won't do them because I'm at the game, and then I don't usually get home till late after a home game. So we'll see what happens, but maybe we'll do a couple for the home games. If they're early games, they'll just be a little bit delayed until I can get home. But you guys got anything else you want to kind of cover here? Or?
Flush it and start looking forward to Hamilton. Like this is to the point. It was our first game of the season. Shit didn't go our way in a lot of ways, guys, but I think Buck has proven last year they started 2-5. They were able to right the ship. I think this is going to be an opportunity for them to go and look, hey, we're not that far off. We got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot, and let's just start dialing in and focusing. Their biggest obstacle is how bad are the injuries. That's something that's going to determine the next 4 weeks, potentially, or next month of the season, is how much can they survive or add or do whatever they need to do with the roster to get this as the best roster going forward, because those are some crucial losses potentially.
Run game non-existence. Well, when you only hand the ball off 12 times, it's kind of hard to judge the running game. But
yeah.
And there was another comment earlier about, well, when you get down, you have to abandon the run. I'm sorry, but like 14 points down in the first quarter is not the time to abandon the run. If you're 14 down in the fourth quarter or late in the third quarter, then maybe I can see it, but like not in the first quarter.
And in Canadian football, of all things, you don't need to abandon it that early. You look at how many, possession changes happen in the final 3 minutes of a game. Like, you have tons of time in Canadian, one big pass play and a couple runs. Like, you need to stay patient. And I thought they got out of that pretty quickly.
I honestly was feeling good. We got the ball back with like 48 seconds, boys. I was like, man, they scored too quick. Let's go. Because when you think about I went and rewatched the West Semi last weekend. And like realizing how Nathan had to kind of maneuver the team down the field, the 2 quick passes to Justin McKinnis with, I believe, like I think it was under 30 seconds or something like that. So I was like, man, 43 seconds. Like, as you said, Brian, would have been nice to have a timeout in your back pocket to not maybe have as much urgency towards the sideline and kind of have you in that, like, basically kind of like big play or kind of check down or bust basically in that scenario. But I was confident that they were going to have an opportunity or a crack at the end zone.
48 seconds with our starting receiving core, I think there's a chance we win that game.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Cause I thought the same thing.
Two drops.
I was like, bang, hey, we got 48 seconds. It's Canadian. Get a first down. That clock stops until the ball's reset. We're good. And then I went, oh, right. And then when I saw them jog out James Butler out to wide out and James Bond in there, I was like, oh no. This is not a good look.
I think the other thing, Brian, you mentioned it on Twitter, that's been nice to see, but you could tell the urgency from the Lions offense tonight with that new play clock, kind of having that in the back of their mind, always wanting to be at the line, kind of being able to give Nathan the ability to process. I don't believe that was ever close at all tonight. It looked like at times they were snapping with like even 8-9 seconds left on the play clock, which was pretty nice to see that they were all organized. The play call was coming in nice and quick, and they were all on the same page majority of the time. I don't think there was much confusion. So that was nice to see.
One thing I'd like to see the Lions do a little bit more on offense is hurry up. Because
I agree.
I think with Nathan, he processes things very quickly, and they've had some really good success in games where they've gone with hurry up offense. And especially in a place like Regina and Winnipeg, you don't let the fans get as loud if you're getting up to the line quickly, and it just keeps them on their heels a little bit. And I think maybe a little bit more hurry up would be beneficial towards them, and maybe get more going in the running game. The other thing we talked about the running game, but like the amount of time, I know Horvath was a designated American tonight, so they only had the 25 snaps available to him, but I was expecting to see a little bit more of that two-headed running attack with both of those guys in the lineup, and we just didn't see it tonight.
Here's the thing too with the hurry up is if you can catch a team in a bad personnel grouping and you don't sub, you keep them out of that by just running it and constantly causing problems for them where they can't get out and they're forced to burn a timeout. And I agree. As a guy that calls plays, works with quarterbacks, that sometimes is the best thing, is limit their processing by hurrying, having the play, getting to your quick stuff that they like, that they're comfortable with, and just moving it and getting them into a rhythm. And it can sometimes get them out of a slump.
Yep. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions coming in, I think we're going to call it. We're coming up on an hour and a half. We had about 210 people in here tonight, so we thank you all for stopping in. We hope you guys enjoyed the extra coverage of the game and the discussion. We're going to do this, as we said, for most of the road games, if not all of them. And I'm not sure what's going to happen when we're in Kelowna. We'll see what happens there. But
we'll try to set something up, Brian.
Yeah, I'll bring my laptop and a camera and see if we can get something going. But maybe do a show from Kelowna. I got lots of time to kill there. In my $500 a night hotel room.
I just booked the round trip on the ferries, fellas. So it's official. I'm at least on the ferry, I guess I should say.
Yeah, hopefully they don't break down.
No kidding. Oh God, don't say that, Brian. That's the biggest fear as an Islander, man.
I know. All right, everybody. We thank you for watching the show, and don't get too down. It's only game one. We'll see what happens next week, and hopefully the guys that got hurt will be back in a short time. But thanks for watching, and everybody enjoy the upcoming games. Talk to you soon.